Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Thanks, everybody. Welcome to the second part of our three-part series of the guided conversation brought to you by Cultivate Advisors. For the circle, we are so excited to be here. My name is Stephanie Gary. I'm the Director of Partnerships here at Cultivate Advisors, and I manage our partnership with NABO, which I love dearly. And we are so excited to just bring this new kind of format to you. I'm not sure if any of you joined our last one on creative employee strategies, but we wanted to just open it up, help you facilitate a conversation amongst yourselves. You guys all come from, different strengths and weaknesses and different places of your own businesses. Our goal here is really just to kind of open it up, put some thoughts out there so that you can learn from each other. I am so happy to be joined here by my fellow Cultivate advisor, Autumn Joyce, who is a business advisor. She's also a partner with Cultivate. I will have Autumn give you kind of a little bit of her background as well. But Autumn also was at WBC this past year and did our deep dive. So if you're lucky enough to see her do that, she's actually going to be coming back for WBC this year in Austin. But Autumn, I'll let you say hello if you want.
Yeah, hi. I think I've actually come in contact with a lot of you. I recognize your names and faces. And so I've been with Cultivate a little over 3 years. Like she said, business advisor. I also run a group of other advisors. So I manage the overall success of the portfolio. So I've got a lot of jobs that I really enjoy. But I love this conversation about exit. It's super important, even if you're not planning to exit right now, thinking about it early on is really an important topic. So thank you for having me today.
Yeah, it's not something we talk about a ton at Cultivate, but everything that we're doing when we're working with business owners is kind of that preparing you for that next step whenever it is going to come. If it never comes, if it's in 10 years, if it's in 10 months. One thing I do just want to plug in here, we are NABO's education partner. If you have not spent time on the Institute exploring our free courses, those are fantastic and really helpful for your employees. We've got different courses on there. If you are looking for some video training or just something to boost up some of the people on your team, I definitely recommend you go and check those out. We've got them on leadership, communication, selling, productivity, recruiting, marketing. So check those out. If you have questions, please let me know. I just always want you guys to be aware that those are there. Jumping into the rules here, there are no rules. We just want you to be active and be engaged. Come off mute. This is your time. You guys are taking an hour away from the business. So we want you to make sure that you get out of this what you need. And obviously, as always, if you want to take this conversation offline, Autumn's going to open up some time. This can be really unique to your own situation. So if you want to kind of chat with her through anything, please, we want to give you the space to do that. But with all that being said, I will pass it over to Autumn to kind of facilitate this, but feel free to come off mute or jump in the chat throughout the next hour to join in. So Autumn, that being said, I'll pass it over to you.
All right, well, I thought what I would do first is just set the stage and then open up the room for discussion. Feel free to interrupt me at any point, but I think mostly today it's about thinking about where you are in your exit journey. We did come up with some considerations to be thinking about when getting ready to sell your business. I won't read them. I'll let you read them. And then Stephanie can also provide this afterwards because on the next slide is also some articles that we find really interesting in order to start thinking about and prepping for exit. And I believe that she also sent them out in the email.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Autumn, do you want to just pause real quick and just see and just take a pulse on everybody that's on the call? Just, you might know where each other are at on this journey, but do you want to just see where everybody is at?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we can go around the room. Let's take a check. Where is everybody at in their sort of exit journey? Some people might just be thinking about it. Some people might be actively moving it forward. Some people may have exited before in their business, in another business.
Charu, you want to go?
Unmute. Okay, I muted. Now I'm good. I am looking to exiting, not immediately. I am planning exit. In fact, I'm working with Cultivate advisors on that, and I'm looking out for about 4 years to exit.
Excellent, excellent. Anyone
Also,
else?
maybe if, when we're going around here, if you want to just say like when you're planning on exiting or what stage you're in, and then any specific questions that you have, and then we can kind of go through or go back to them if we need to. Charu, anything specific you want to hit today? Or just kind
No,
of,
just I think just I guess just overall, what kinds of documentations and what kinds of things help raise the value and what kinds of things hurt the value. I think those are always good things to have to
All right.
do, or organization, things like that.
perfect. Love that. Camilla, I see that you are off mute. Do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you very much. Nice to be here. I'm a newer member of the circle. I'm in a deep, thoughtful process now, and what I most need now is just not to be so involved. I'm gradually stepping back so that when I do exit, if I do exit, it will be seamless and not sudden. But I'm most interested at this point in how to value my business. That way I can really think about, could any of my potential buyers that I have in mind really afford it? Could they do it? Is it pie in the sky? Is it a good idea? I don't know. So valuation is really what I'd love to know how to do. Yeah, thanks.
Perfect. Two people want to know about value. Michelle, do you want to come off mute? If you're around.
I am, sorry. So I'm actually just starting the company, but someone that I think is a very wise person said that you have to start with the end in mind and understanding succession planning, evaluating your current company and building your company with the end in mind and how to create that value as you're going forward instead of trying to do it at the end. So that's why I'm here today, is to start learning about what the end could look like, and so that we're moving our company forward with that in mind.
Very cool. Jeanette?
Of course, in a positive way, not in like a bad way, the end in mind. That sounded wrong all of a sudden. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. So I've sold 2 companies. The first one was probably one of the most traumatic experiences I ever had. The second one was a little better. So now I kind of semi-retired and I started a consulting company, and I really am just passionate about helping people get prepared for the exit. So that's kind of what I do with a handful of people now. But I think it's very important to look ahead, and it's a stressful process to go through, for sure.
Glad to have you on here.
Mm-hmm.
Molly, you want to come off mute? You're next on my video screen. There you go.
Sure. So my business partner and I are probably in the 3 to 5 year range in terms of exit. We've had the business for over 20 years and are both on the downslope to 60. So, we don't want to work forever, but at the same time, we're not ready to sell it quite yet. So we need to build the value. We had a couple big hits recently in the last 2 years on revenue and size and stuff. And so we kind of need to build it back up to where it was, and so that we can get the money that we want out of it when we sell.
Cool. Hearing a lot about value. So, Karen, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I am solidly in the 60s at 65 in June, and I'm planning on the next 3 to 5 years. I own a mental health agency, and so and I'm an S corporation. So I've had my business for 10 years. I've never wanted to have much of a profit, because then it all flows through and I just have to pay taxes on it. So I realized over the next few years I need to, try to show more profit to make it a business someone wants to buy. I had an offer pre-COVID and they really lowballed me, but it helped me think about what I really want when I retire and what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
Debbie?
Good morning. I'm finally to my computer. I don't have my camera right, I can tell. I'm ready to sell yesterday. And a lot of, I'm second generation, and then I have my son in the business who's third, and now I have my granddaughter who's fourth. So the way I structured things, though, I have 3 different businesses. One being my sign company, which is what my son actually started and grew. So my thought from way back in the 80s was if at some point I wanted to sell the mothership, which is Alert Light, then I would have the sign company that my son could just keep going with and perpetuate, and that would set him up for his career as long as he wanted to do that. I like others that commented, you know, COVID kind of took some things away and increased some costs that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So I'm trying to build my business back to the point where I either need to build my management team with fresh talent, or I need to consider selling. I've been approached a number of times, mostly because of my traffic control. But we've got to get the business in a little bit more strategic alignment with what these buyers are looking for. And if the right price came along, I'd do it. And if it doesn't, then that's fine too. So I'm hoping to learn from all these ladies on how this works.
Fantastic. Thanks, Debbie. And last, I think we've got actually 2 more. Danya, are you there?
I am.
Hi.
So I'm kind of in the same boat as Debbie. Like if the right price came along, I would sell today. If not, I'm pushing forward to get more. So I mean, I'm open to sell at any time, but I've also laid the foundation that I need to make that happen, because I started with the end in mind, because I'm of that belief that you have to start with the end.
Cool. And lastly, Lisa.
Hi there. So for me, it's about having the right opportunity to sell. Right now, I'm just trying to get all the policies in place, make sure I have the right key staff in order to find the right buyer. We're always approached a couple times a year, but it's getting to the point with having, now I have 4 companies. The main company I do have to sell probably sooner than I expected. Originally it was 9 years, but if I just start doing an accelerator and VC funding for the other company, I have to sell the one because I'm not going to be able to maintain it.
Gotcha. All right, well, seems like everybody's kind of coming at different levels. We've got some that are in the 3 to 5 year range, some that are like as soon as possible, others that, you know they need to boost the value. So cool, let's take that and kind of dive in. And Autumn, if you want to guide through, but
Yeah, I mean, I heard two or maybe 3 main points. A lot of it, like the end in mind, certainly the valuation piece. And then this like opportunity, like when is the right time, right? And so I think all of those things just quickly fit into 3 categories. I think someone mentioned around emotional readiness and understanding, like, someone said that it was quite like traumatic the first go around. Yeah, I hear that a lot. Oftentimes I will tell clients to maybe even take a couple dry runs, accept LOIs that maybe, wouldn't be the right price, but just so that you can actually sort of go through some of the process so that it becomes more familiar. But I think, when people start thinking about what the end in mind is, you really have to think about what you want out of it personally. And this is a very emotional, personal journey. The other piece, which I'm going to skip business readiness, is financial readiness. And I mean, this really takes into consideration, like, how much do you need in order to fulfill your goal? And so obviously there's tax implications. There's all these other things that are going on. I heard others of you who have other businesses that run alongside this. So this really takes a wealth advisor, an accountant, tax advice, in order to be able to get to that point. And sometimes those things are ever changing as you get closer to that sell. And so making sure that if, you know, as you get closer and closer to that sort of 3, 5, I heard 8, 9 year mark, you're continuing to come back to this financial readiness. I think the biggest piece though is around the business readiness, and that's where the valuation piece comes into play. What is the value of my business? Both in terms of a profit and revenue standpoint, but also operationally, and whether or not you can exit yourself from the business. And so, you know, coming up with a valuation for your business on what you're worth right now is so, it is so personal. It's so personalized to individual businesses, both the market, what industry you're in. So I'm interested, I guess maybe I'll throw it back to you ladies around those of you who have had offers or have been through the selling process. How did you figure out what your business was worth when you went through that process?
I'll jump in here. Both times I had a 4x a 4-time multiple on the EBITDA. And then there was definitely the add backs in for my salary, additional add backs for other things that added to the value of the business. But it was definitely obviously a multiple of the EBITDA, and then went up from there.
It's typically a really good place to start, is that multiple. And then the other things that come alongside that are what are can be very particular to the business or the industry or who's buying you.
That necessarily doesn't tie into like what you personally need or like your freedom point, right?
No, not at all. I think those are two separate issues. Like your freedom point is a number that you know that you need to hit, right? And that's after taxes. So if you need 5 million after taxes, you need to take that in consideration when you're considering a sale price. And that really depends. I mean, that depends on a lot of things, which is why it's so important to have tax advice and a wealth advisor to understand, especially if this is your exit from, exit into retirement versus exit into like starting another business. Those two things could be very different as well.
The other thing that was helpful too, that I didn't know until I went through it the first time, is that you can structure it to where you're not taking all the money up front. So you can spread out the tax burden, which is what I did the first time. And then I was making interest money on the money that they held back. It wasn't an earn out, but it structured it. So tax wise, I wasn't taking that hit all at once. So that was important for what I wanted to keep afterwards, which is a great point that you just made.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And then you hit on the difference between that type of structure and an earnout, because those are totally two different things. Earnout can be attached to the then performance of the business over time, and you actually don't experience the earnout unless the business continues performing. So you're straddled to that business even as you've exited.
So in my case, if I may, I think I've underestimate what my company is worth. So where do we start with that? Because there's a lot of expenses in there. I do, like one of the other ladies said, I maximize my expenses in order to minimize my tax. So I could go through and I could see, okay, that could go away, that could go away, that could go away. So how do we get to a point? How do we figure out a good baseline on where to even start in any negotiations?
Does anyone have a recommendation for her that has been through the process of valuation?
So one thing that I have been doing is I kind of look through and pull out all the things that I can take out. And then I look at what my real net income is if I take out all those things. It is done a little haphazardly. I could have been a little bit more careful about really taking each item out. And I have a bookkeeper and I've talked to him about doing that. but he hasn't started doing it. And I'm partly just kind of leaving it because I'm thinking if I start separating out and the IRS decides to make a visit, that may not be so good for me. So I'm just leaving it, but I do kind of keep in mind what are some of the things that I need to take out. And there's so much, right? I travel all the time. I mean, is the travel really necessary? Maybe not. NABO, is it necessary? Yes, for my
Yes.
life, but not for selling the business.
So maybe the way to do it is have two columns, one that are expenses related specifically to ourselves, and then the ones that are arbitrary or can be changed depending on whoever is in charge.
You
Okay.
could do that. I'm not and like I said, the reason I'm not doing that is because I don't want to get audited by IRS. So I am just keeping it all mixed together.
Thank
Well, I
you.
mean, there is a difference between, doing that action in QuickBooks and then just, downloading a spreadsheet and sort of separating what it is that you're running through the business so that you have an understanding. I know I've worked with clients where I'm like, okay, let's just make a list of every single thing you're running through the business right now and what the actual dollars are, because those are actually considerations for what you are going to need in order to exit, because all of those things now become your expense, whether it's your car or your internet or your meals or whatever else is going through there. So it's a really good.
And just to clarify, I'm taking out things that could be counted as business, but they're not necessary for the business, right? Like NABO is an example. Of course, NABO is a small expense, but like maybe an advisor that you meet with monthly and you're paying them hourly for that advice, that can really add up, but it's really not necessary. I mean, even though we think it's good for us and for our company.
And that is a legitimate business expense, but there's some things, that a new owner may not be interested in doing. Like they may not be a part of NABO. They may choose a different organization or whatever. So those are the kind of things that I look at as their wish list items or things that are important to us to run the business. So they are important to business. I get a lot out of NABO that teaches me things or gives me at least the perception that I'm not as crazy as I think, because I find out that it's not just me. I'm not into all this by myself. But yet a guy may buy the company and may not see the value. So it is a legitimate expense. So you don't need to worry about the IRS. It's when you have literally personal things going through that would become a problem, which I doubt you do that. So.
I just got a question that says, do you recommend a professional valuation company? I think that eventually, you're going to have to get some sort of real true valuation as you get closer to sell. I think that when you're in the process of sort of thinking about your freedom point and your years out, I think it's good to go through the exercise of just sort of like some, back of napkin math, I like to call it, where you're trying to figure out, what is this thing worth, or what kind of multiple do I think I could get based off of, what my industry is producing at the moment. So yes, but you need to be closer into that actual sale. I'll add too onto the expense side of things. I think that sometimes when people are looking at the valuation of their businesses and looking at the add backs, one of the things to consider is your own salary. If you are taking a salary, or if you are, not just taking distributions, but taking a salary, if your job does not need to be replaced, that is also considered something that you can add back in. If that makes sense.
Mila, did you want to say something?
Well, I started to go through the process of valuation with a professional company, and they really have it nailed down. I mean, they really know how to do all this, and I have no idea. And anyway, that's, I guess, what I'm hoping for today is an actual formula for how we can do that napkin math and come up with a realistic ballpark figure. Because without that, I can't really go forward. I mean, I just, that's my sticking point to figure out, how to do this. And like I said, I've got some people in mind in my company that would love a chance to buy it, but can they? You know, once, depending on the valuation, they will have bank loan, they'll have interest on the debt, they'll have all those kinds of things. And is that enough to make enough profit for them to, besides paying all the taxes every month, every quarter, is that enough for them to make it attractive and to make it a life-changing thing? and something that they can support themselves for the rest of their lives.
I mean, I can provide a simple formula. It past the simple, it really comes down to your industry, which I don't know what your industry is. And it comes down to, I mean, like how is it organized? You know, are you replaceable? There's a lot of pieces. But you want to start with your revenue, you want to look at your expenses. And that was the whole piece around looking at your add backs, right? So that you can kind of have that back of math or back of napkin profitability number. So that you can then, you know, make some quick calculations based off of what people are paying in your industry. But again, there is no, I don't think there's any simple answer to that. It is so specific to your actual like business in terms of how it's structured and everything beyond that. So that would give you like a rough kind of picture, but it's not going to get you close to being completely accurate.
And then what do you do? What do you do with your revenue plus add backs? What do you do with that? Do you multiply it by something? Is it, I mean,
no, so
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think, you know what I would suggest is I mean, it's math, right? Like if I had your profit and loss in front of me, I could do the math for you. But and I'm not sure how to explain this without some sort of profit and loss in front of me. So I would suggest getting in touch with Stephanie. I'm happy to spend a few minutes with you showing you. But again, I think it's a really specific question, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to answer that in any sort of intelligent way through Zoom today.
Nat, do you want to take a stab?
Yeah, I mean, Autumn's right. It is very particular. There are, and I don't know if Cultivate does this because I know you guys might do some business valuation, but there are different levels of business valuation. So you can get a high level valuation for, you know, $1,000 to $1,500. That's going to give you, I mean, you can't take it to the bank and you can't take it to a buyer and I wouldn't price my business on that. But that's what I did about 5 years out, was at least went, what ballpark am I in? And then as you get closer, then, you know, a valuation can be anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000, 15,000, really just depends on how technical and difficult your business is to evaluate. But I think that's what Autumn's trying to say, is that there is some time that needs to be invested into that to even do a high level. It's not necessarily napkin math if you want to kind of see the ballpark you're in.
All right. Well, maybe I should just go forward with the professional company that was starting that process for me.
Yeah, she makes a good
And
point.
invest in that.
Sorry, she makes a good point in that there's different levels. And so it's really like what I'm explaining in terms of back of math is just looking at the P&L. And yeah, we do high level valuations for a price, but we also can do something that is quite simple by just asking some questions and looking at your P&L. But again, it is very specific to the business. And some businesses are so complicated that it would be very difficult to do without, you know, knowing a lot more information. So
Good. I'll reach out to Stephanie then. Thanks.
Autumn, do those valuations typically include like what you need to work on?
They can, most definitely. I know that, you know, we have a segment of our business at Cultivate that looks at both a high level valuation based off of your industry, and then actually goes through and does like the operational audit behind what needs to happen in the business in order to increase that valuation over time. It also like addresses some of the like freedom point pieces, like how much do you need at a high level, and then it can also like direct you toward more like wealth advisors and tax people to get your particular situation. But it is a really good exercise, especially if you're thinking, you know, if you're a little bit far out and you're looking at the business and from an operational sense of what would make it worth more, that exercise can be really helpful.
Lisa just put in the chat, can you share more about the operations audit needed to exit?
Yeah, so it's a program that we have here at Cultivate that is through a platform called Capitalize. And essentially it runs you through, it takes about, it's a 2-hour survey that you answer a ton of questions about the business. You work with an advisor in terms of answering those and going through it. The software actually produces a valuation, a high level valuation for your business. And then it comes back with points in which you need to work on in the business in order to increase it. So oftentimes that has to do with owner, making sure the owner is able to exit without having to replace them. Processes, systems, automations, making sure that there aren't any sort of people in the business that if they left, that the whole thing would come crashing down. But that's a bit about it. So it's very particular to the business itself and where they are in terms of their growth. So does that answer your question?
She's on mute, but yeah, there we go.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, if you're interested, I could definitely provide more information around it. I've had several clients go through it. I actually have a 4-location pediatrician business in Austin, Texas that went through the whole process. They're about 2 years in, and they are in the exit process right now and just got a really sweet offer. So it's been quite the journey for them.
Are there any specific questions or like masterminding that anybody wants to bring up that they're like, I'm trying to solve this right now? Or if anybody has any, I feel like the personal emotional readiness, everybody seems to be pretty good with that. It's more of like the business readiness, the value, how to increase the value, and not even so much the freedom point. But is there anything anybody wants to get out of this time together right now that you want to come off mute, share, ask others about specifically? Karen?
Bringing up the kind of emotional part, when I've done through NABO, I've done a couple of these exit things. And I think one of the things that impressed me was more with the emotional piece of, you know, we all think we're valued higher than we probably are. But I think giving, you know, giving up what was your baby and letting somebody else take over. And I know that a couple of the speakers have talked about in the past of, you know, how hard it was to walk away and to be like, it's not mine anymore. And how do you do that? With the offer that I had, they were going to have me stay on for 3 years. And continue to run things. And they said, you know, nobody's going to even know that you've sold the business. But, you know, for me, I thought it might be painful to be in that position of you're staying on, watching somebody else, you know, take over your company. So I don't know what the pros and cons of having that, you know, staying on to help run things with somebody else owning and, you know, or just, you know, walking away. And just the last piece of that being in, I'm in a service industry. I have been working, you know, for the last several years that people are referring to my company and not me as the provider, you know, that they're, you know, the analogy being like the dentist, you know, you can't be, oh, you want to see this Dr. Smith, but it has to be, we want, you know, the dental Highland Dental Services and not, it has to be the company. So I have been really mindful of that. But yeah, if you can speak about emotionally, how do you walk away? What are the pros and cons of staying on a little bit?
I think the two things that you're talking about are rather related, right? So part of being emotionally ready to give it up, and I think everybody deals with this differently. Some people can just walk away. Some people are really emotionally tied, but part of getting a higher valuation is making sure that you as the owner are pretty redundant in the business and you're not needed, just so that you can, the business can operate. Like imagine yourselves going to Thailand for 3 months and the business can operate completely without you. And that exercise of letting go in that way, and or either hiring someone or however you choose to do that, is also that piece of letting go before you've even exited. I know a lot of, and you guys can speak to this, a lot of offers require the owner to stay on. And require the owner to stay on for a couple of years. And it's definitely something that you need to consider before going into it. Are you the type of personality that can do that? And have somebody else running the business, but you still being there. So I guess I'll ask the question is how many of you that have experienced receiving offers, part of that offer was for you to stay on?
Yeah, Jeanette, definitely. Unmute, tell us.
So the first time that I sold my company in Ohio, I did not have to stay on. And they asked me actually to go out and gave me the opportunity to start another location in Los Angeles, which I did. And I was part owner in that. And then I sold that 3 years later. So the first time I did not have to stay. And honestly, that was more painful than staying. But then after staying, that was painful too. It's just different kind. Karen, what you said about your baby, it's, before I sold, I was able to leave for months at a time, go out to LA, and things ran without me. So that was great. But it was different that day that I walked out the door and I was no longer a woman business owner. And I went home and my identity was gone. And it was really, really difficult for me. And I underestimated. That's why I'm so passionate about doing what I do now with a handful of people, because it just was not, nobody talked about that. And so Karen, I'm glad that you brought that up, and Autumn, that you've talked about that a little bit, because, we, especially as women, are so emotionally invested in our companies, so much more so than men. And so, men's identities are wrapped up in their businesses, but for us, this is our family, our connection, our community, our identity. I remember going, gosh, can I even be a NABO anymore? And so I went into not depression, but I was really sad for a while. And then to watch things happen in the company that they said they wouldn't do, but they did, and to watch the stuff that happens. I sold to private equity. So it was really, really hard. Then COVID happened, and actually the company I sold was dismantled and it's gone. Everybody was laid off because I was in the trade show and event business. So both companies were completely dismantled, except they kept the salespeople. So 28 people lost their jobs 3 years after I sold it. Now, thank God I sold it, because it would have been worth pennies on the dollar. So yes, the emotional part is a piece that having, mindfulness about that is that it's going to be, I promise you, it's going to be more difficult and painful and sad for you than you think. Because right now you're probably like I was, oh my God, I'd sell this company for $1. Like I would say that sometimes on a hard day, I will sell this company for $1 to the first person that walks in and puts $1 on my desk. But it still is your baby. And so, do consider that for sure.
And we tell our clients to really think hard about what's next and have it sort of lined up, right? So that there's something to catch you.
Life after exit. Yep. Life after exit. It's pay as much, like you say, pay as much attention to life after exit as you do to actual exit. That would be my advice.
Some really good advice. You actually, I sold my business now, it's 2009, so it's been a really long time, but your story right there just made me feel it. Like I got goosebumps. I've totally forgotten that feeling of the day after. I was just like, oh, now what do I do?
I kept a journal actually for the entire year of selling. And so if I read it back, I can actually feel the like stress and the physical sad. Like I would write in there, came home crying again, like, because I was under an NDA. I sold to private equity and they were hardcore. Like I had Ernst & Young auditors crawling in my books for months. It was hardcore. And I couldn't tell anybody anything. And so people kind of could sense something was going on. I was sneaking into my office at midnight to get HR files and documents, which, I didn't have access to because they were locked in my HR manager's desk. I couldn't just ask her, hey, can I have all the NDAs for everybody in the company? Things like that they don't tell you. So I couldn't say anything and people were sensing it. And I felt like I was lying, like I was being deceitful and deceptive and that whole thing. So yeah, I kept a journal. And now when I read that back, it's like, oh my gosh, crazy.
The NDA thing that you just brought up, NDAs, non-competes, that's actually something that you need to consider as well. I was asked to sign an NDA and a non-compete. I refused to do it because I wanted to be able to continue to work in my industry.
And they still went forward with buying. And
Yep.
yeah. Good.
It was the sticking point at the end, but I wouldn't do it.
It's funny that you say that, Autumn, because this is another thing people need to know that will happen. And you just said it at the end, when you've just about been ready, this happened to me twice, when you're just about ready to sign the deal and you've started to transfer over everything and you've got that money spent in your head, they will come back and try to change the deal, especially if you're working on private equity. And they tried to do that to me and change it to an earnout for $1 million of the dollars that were there. And I remember I just had this resolve in my head of like, you know what, worst case scenario, the deal falls through and I'll just start, I'll just hire somebody to run it, whatever. And so they offered me the earnout and I said, I've already earned that money. And so if we're not sticking to the deal that we signed, I'll walk away. And I sat there silent for what felt like forever and they took the deal. So just be prepared that they're going to play hardball at the end. It's just what they do.
And that's the emotional piece too, because you're really emotional at that stage, right?
Totally. Yeah, you've already spent the money. You're already out. Your freedom is right there and they mess around with you.
Which is why I recommend to clients to take advantage of offers that are things that you would not even consider, but that you could actually step through some of this process and learn about the process through some of those offers that are like, no way. But then you've actually experienced some of that. So it's not new. You're not working through it in terms of learning about it at the same time you're going through the emotional piece of it. It's just too much. Oh.
Can I ask a quick question? For those that have been involved in this, like Jeanette, are you getting approached by a broker? Or are you getting approached by the actual venture capitalists or interested buyers?
I personally hired a broker to broker my business. I was in a deal where I represented a manufacturer and the manufacturer had been purchased. The owner had died and had sold to private equity. And I heard through the grapevine that their growth strategy was going to be to buy up dealers. So I hired a broker. I was at the point in time where my business was at the top of its game. And we were about 5 years out of a recession. And I thought, we're going to slump. This is the time to sell high. Thank God I did at the time. So I hired a broker, Debbie, that actually went out. And the first person they talked to was the manufacturer, but they also talked to other buyers. So I had multiple opportunities, which drove up the price.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing.
The important part of that, I think, is around the industry research, right? You knew where your industry was, you understood what was going on and where it was in its cycle. And that's a really important point. Because you want to make sure that you hit your industry cycle at the right place.
Jeanette, is there anything that you would have done differently? Since it seems like you're the most You kind of looking back at everything.
No, I mean, honestly, what is the statistic? 1% of people, is it 1 or 3% of people, successfully scale a business to over $1 million and sell it, especially women. So I feel grateful and blessed that I was able to do it twice. I don't know that I would do anything different. I think I learned a lot, and I take those lessons now and I'm grateful for them. But I think maybe just, I'm glad I had a partner that walked through it. So whether it's a business advisor or a broker or whoever, I wouldn't go through it on my own, because it's just like, what do they say? Hire people that are smarter than you and more knowledgeable than you in the things that you haven't experienced. So I'm glad I did that. But no, I don't think I would change. I can't think of anything I would change.
Mhm. Right, just being women, I feel like the emotions will sneak up at random times, and it's good to have other people on your side that can be that outside perspective and make sure that you're looking at it from all the different angles that you need to.
If I hadn't have had my business consultant, I would not have been able to be as strong as I was on the phone that day, because I had just had a conversation with her and she said to me, "What's the worst thing that can happen?" And I'm like, "They don't do the deal. Like, I'm not going to have the money. Like, they don't." And she goes, "And what would you do?" I'm like, "Well, I get," and so we walked through what that looked like. And I left that consulting session with her feeling empowered, like, okay, worst case scenario, I can still live with. And so, no, I'm not going to do a bad deal. And that's why I strongly encourage people, do not do that on your own, because don't underestimate the emotions and the games that will be played. It's a big deal.
Mhm.
I know when I had an offer, so mine came, someone just a group, they were buying up mental health agencies, reached out to me via email. But I think what was interesting for me, and being in the mental health field and looking at deeper issues, was kind of my own insecurities about my relationship with money, and being able to manage money. And I was married for 20 years to someone who continually told me I was fiscally irresponsible, and that he was a narcissist. So it was him bouncing his own feelings about himself on me. And so even after I started my business, there was that voice in the back of my head that I didn't know what I was doing financially. And so it was a big growing moment for me to hand over the financials for my company with this prospective buyer, because I was afraid of they'd come back and just validate that I wasn't good enough, and that, and I think some of those deeper issues of being able to be assertive, and, and in that last minute phone call where they're starting to play games with you, I think it brings up some, really core issues. And it was really, it was such a growth moment for me to have them come back and even give me an offer. I was like, wow, I am good enough. This is amazing, and that I did build something, that made me feel like I was doing a good job managing money, and, was able to really let that go. And, they gave me a lowball offer, and because I take such a minimal salary, they gave me what they thought would be a decent salary. I was like, hey, without my income distributions, I'd be eating top ramen, so forget it. But it really, again, it helped me clarify what I do need to retire. And it was a really helpful exercise. It was stressful, but I ended up turning them down. So interesting to see where it takes you when you start that process.
Thanks for sharing. Got a couple more minutes. Debbie, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. Is it recommended? Because I think I'm trying to figure out the best way to move forward. Is it recommended to go through the exercise, whether or not it is a successful transaction? Is my first question. Second one is it recommended to have a broker? Because I have a broker that is like driving me crazy. He calls me constantly, but he also wants a high fee, because my industry is hot in the takeover, merger and acquisition market. But their fee is unreasonable, in my opinion. So that's not to say that's the only broker out there. So am I better off just going through the exercise and seeing how it works and seeing what I need to do to be prepared? Or maybe I am prepared and I just don't know it. You know, when you work so hard on your business, you don't always look up and see what's going on around you. In other words, what would be the recommended steps if I wanted to move forward and kind of put my toes in the water? And hopefully in the ocean water, but if I was to put my toes in the water.
I think that depending on how close you are, I think that going through the process called the dry run is really, for most people, highly beneficial. Especially if you're someone that really likes to understand details, and it takes a long time to make decisions, and that needs the education piece behind it, which a lot of people are, right? So that it really helps to understand it. And with that said, I also think that it's important to talk to someone who you know knows a bit about businesses and like the fundamentals of how the business is structured, to give you some ideas and give you some feedback on how you might increase the value based off of what's actually happening in the business, right? You know, looking at the profit and loss, looking at how this thing is structured. That is another first step. Business brokers, there's a lot of good ones and there's a lot of like not so good ones, right? Like, and I think that you're experiencing, you know, the high pressure annoyance and stuff. You need to find someone that you can trust.
That's
So
the
that
key right there.
Yeah, it might be a business broker, it might be an advisor, it might be, you know, you just have to find someone that you can trust. And especially if you're in a business, like you said, or an industry where there are a lot of mergers and things going on right now, you will get a lot of business brokers calling you because they want to make the fee. And they don't necessarily have your best interest in heart, which is why some of this initial stuff is good to go through, because then at least you have a level of understanding where you can tell if someone's, you know, selling you a line, or if they really have your interests at heart. That would be my advice.
That's why I appreciate these. I have no problem making decisions. I'm not I know numbers. My background is that, but my background is not in selling a business. So I need someone I could trust. My industry isn't exactly the most trusting. It's a male dominated industry. There are very few women in what I do. And the men tend to try and take advantage.
What do you do? What's your industry?
Well, we're in construction. We do, we're a subcontractor, do traffic control. Then I also have a company and we have construction equipment and supplies. So I have a rounded business. It's a nice business. But we also have never operated it in order to just build it and sell it. It's a family business. But I don't see my son, I can't really tell yet, but I don't see my son having the drive that I do to keep going, but he loves the sign part of it, which is why I spun that off a number of years ago. So it's just finding someone who could honestly tell me, okay, here's what it's valued at today. Here's what you need to do to make that value go up, because I'm not going to be around forever. And frankly, I'm working harder now after COVID than I was 15 years ago. So I just want a little bit of a life. I'm a workaholic. I'll never not want to work, but if I was able to sell the big company, then I would just be involved in the smaller one with my son. So
yeah.
Debbie, there's one more thing to add to Autumn's wise words about using somebody that you trust. And Linda posted somebody in the in the chat, but there's also I went off of referrals. So, you know, I would never, if somebody knocked on my door and was pushy, I would never use them. I reached out to my business broker because I knew the owner of the brokerage. She was a NABO member. And so there are tons of referrals, and they don't have to be local. You can work with a broker anywhere around the country, and their fees are negotiable.
Okay.
I negotiated mine.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
And all of you too.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining. It feels like the last 20 minutes, we all start to really get into a good discussion, but it doesn't have to stop here. You guys probably all have a better understanding of where each other are at. You have Jeanette, who's a fantastic resource. Autumn, again, is opening up her calendar. You guys, these free advising sessions that we give, this is what we do. We look at where you're at, when you're trying to exit, what is the next step, and then help you build out a plan of what that looks like. It's 2 hours of your time. It's so incredibly valuable. It is not a sales pitch. It is really just our way of helping NAWBO members kind of get some clarity on those next steps. So really recommend you take advantage of that if you are interested. If you have just specific questions, autumn@cultivateadvisors.com. Send them over. She can send you some quick tools. Something else that we have coming up too, which is more content heavy, is our certified exit planner at Cultivate. His name is Greg Maddox. He is doing a NAWBO national webinar on April 20th. It is going to be content heavy. It's not going to be as much of a conversation, but if you are looking for more tactical things specific to exiting, that would be a great one for you to join in. Autumn, you've been fantastic as always. Thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for your conversation. Linda, for setting this up for us. And we've got one more of these guided conversations. It's called Marketing for the Future. I don't really know what direction we want to go with that. So I'm going to really lean on you guys to give me some feedback the week out. But that one is coming up on May 3rd. There we go. Same time. Wonderful. Great. And if you guys have any questions, Stephanie@cultivateadvisors.com, you can always reach out to me. But
Stephanie, I had to miss the first session. Is that available somewhere? I mean, is there a recording or something that
is a recording that I think Linda has.
I will send it to you, Debbie.
Linda, can I sweet talk you? Okay.
Consider it done.
Perfect. Well, ladies, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a wonderful weekend. Happy Easter if you celebrate. And we'll see you next month and hopefully sooner than that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Great conversation.